So do you have coffee? Do you drink a lot of coffee sometimes?
Oh, too much. Far too much. Are you a coffee drinker or a tea drinker?
Both. But I find tea in the mornings, coffee in the afternoon.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Huh. I'm kind of the opposite. I think favorite meal is the hardest part there. I'm Peter Fontana. I am a senior analyst at We Are Social. My favorite meal would have to be anything Mom cooks. I just have to say that. And that's not because I have to say it because she would make me say it. I have to say it because I would always want to say that.
The most interesting thing about you?
Most interesting thing about me? I think the most interesting thing about me is the people I know. I always say that to people. I say, you know, the people I know are far more interesting than me, and I have no idea why they want to hang out with me. And so I think the experiences I've had, the stories I could tell you about some of the people I know and some of the experiences I've had is probably the most interesting thing about me. Yeah, it's a difficult one because unless things have changed, and they will change, you can't really get a degree in this. You can maybe take a class in it, you maybe hear pieces of this. Intern like crazy as much as you can, because I think it allows you to get experience without actually having to land that job. So if you can intern before you graduate, that's even better, so that you have that experience, and that's an extra step towards getting the job when you get out. Otherwise, whatever job you get, if you want to get into social media eventually, nothing's the end-all be-all, and try and get a job that has at least a piece of social media. That's how I got into it. I didn't start out in a job that had social media. My job kind of it became partly social media, and then I moved completely into social media. So I think if you can get a job that at least has some responsibility in social media, realize that your first job's not the end-all be-all, and that you can just keep your eyes open and learn on the job as much as you can. My first comment to myself after I graduated undergrad, which was lifetimes ago, was college is over and now the real education begins. Because you're entering into life and you gotta actually learn about the world and what's really out there. Everything you've done before then is not to be dismissed. It's definitely gonna help you into that. But the other thing you can do is certainly keep up with blogs, keep up with different publications that are coming out on this. Perfect transition from keeping updated, and I think books, it's a challenge. I do have recommendations, but it's a challenge in this space to read a book. There was a book that was written on specifically on Google Analytics, and 6 months later it was completely outdated, and it's understandable. And so social media, it's even worse. It's very difficult to find a book that would explain social media analytics that wouldn't then be outdated a year from now. It's not the fault of the author, it's just the fact that the space hasn't calmed down yet. So therefore, much like classes and universities at this point in time are good at preparing you with theory, preparing you with things that maybe are practical application that might be outdated, but like they're good on a high level. I think books are good on a high level, but you need to supplement that with real work, real practical experience, learning on the job, and what's on that level in terms of reading would be blogs. It would be things that are out there that are talking about social media every day, new ways to measure things. I don't want to tout our company blog too well, but it's a great social digest, the We Are Social blog, and it gives you regular updates every week about the different things that are happening in social media. Mashable, you can't beat that. That's a daily blog, of course, on social media that gives you a lot of things. But as far as books on a more macro level, I think one of my favorite books that I've read for digital measurement in general has been a book that has come out with multiple editions. It's called Web Analytics, an Hour a Day, and it's not just digital web analytics, it's just thinking about digital measurement in general. And yes, it does get into the nitty-gritty of how to track a website and how to track banners and stuff like that, but I think also it talks about the philosophy of how digital measurement is different from maybe offline measurement, which is kind of where that world evolved into. And that's important to know about, in my opinion, because a lot of times your client, if you're working in an agency, comes from that sort of old world thinking of perceptual surveys, of up is always good, down is always bad, whereas in social media, volume going up is not always good. You know, your green arrow, red arrow doesn't always apply. And so I think having a book that talks about that kind of transition, I think is really good, and it kind of sets the stage for social media as well, but it's mainly digital altogether. Another book that I really like, that I would recommend to college graduates, not necessarily specifically doing social media, but dealing with business in general. If you're getting into the marketing world, there's this guy who's been writing for business management for about 70 years, and you think to yourself, 70 years, you know, what could be valid in the 1950s that's valid now? Well, after reading it, I thought there was quite a bit valid in it. His name is Peter Drucker, and he wrote several books over the years, but in recent years he put out a book called The Essential Drucker. It's digestible, couldn't be more than 200 pages or so, and it was recommended to me by somebody who had been in the industry for years, an old professor of mine, who I thought, you know, I'd humor him and read the book, but after reading it I was very taken aback by how much I actually learned from that. Again, on a high level, you're not talking about practical application, that's for blogs. You're just talking on a high level. And then the third one, I think this is becoming increasingly important, especially if you're going to work in a capacity where you're going to do measurement or you're going to do some sort of report writing. Data visualization is huge. I'm terrible at it. I think it takes a strange blend of numbers and artistic capability to be able to make the numbers dance, so to speak. I mean, word clouds, they look really pretty and people like them. Data people hate them because, you know, the big word is how much bigger than the small word. And so it's definitely a good piece, and thinking in that visualization kind of realm. So there's several books out there. Edward Tufte is a guy who does a speaking circuit, and he's put out at least 4 books. I believe he's a numbers guy and his wife is an artist, and so that kind of merged together, worked out really well for them. The other one that's been on my list is the Visual Miscellaneum, and it talks about how to digest the many numbers and statistics that come out in magazines all the time. And I always find it really funny that people always eat up these statistics. They eat up any sign that says, you know, 30% of people who drink coffee every day will, you know, have heart problems or something like that. And don't quote me on that because that's not true. But people eat those statistics up, but people hate taking surveys. I don't think they realize where those statistics come from. But being able to digest those statistics on an everyday basis, whether you're a consumer or whether you're working in social media or whether you're working in marketing in some capacity, client side, agency side, you're going to be inundated with either creating or reading graphs, reading pieces of data, and especially since digital is so much more measurable than offline research ever was. I think being able to present that in a digestible, easy way, because especially for social media, which is so new and scary to a lot of people anyway, in terms of what does this mean, people talking about this, what the heck does that mean? You know, if you can display information in a visual way, you're going to definitely have a higher impact.